Welcome back. So I think we might have picked up some jolly good tips there on how to end burnout and to unlock our full potential. Next up, we have a panel on mateship, a focus on male mental health with Jonny Benjamin and Neil Laybourn. Now, Jonny Benjamin and Neil Laybourn first met in early 2008 when Neil approached Jonny, who was sitting on the edge of Waterloo Bridge. He asked if he was all right. The conversation that followed was to change both of their lives forever.
I'm joined today by Jonny Benjamin and Neil Laybourn. So, guys, thank you so much for joining the Evening Standards London Minds event series. It's really nice to speak to you both. And obviously, we're here today to discuss male mental health and the importance of mateship. So, first of all, can you just say hi to me?
Hello, how you doing? Thank you for inviting us on today, and we're really happy to be joining this conversation with you.
Yes, thank you. Thanks very much for having us on. Thank you.
Fantastic. For those who don't know, despite it being a viral campaign a few years ago, could you talk to me about how the two of you met?
Yeah. So I guess I'll start. So we met under pretty dire circumstances, I'd say. It was actually in the middle of London. I was on the edge of a bridge in a really, really bad place. And I'd given up. I'd just been diagnosed with something called schizoaffective disorder, which is like a form of schizophrenia. Mm-hmm. I was in hospital at the time. I was 20. And when I got that diagnosis, I gave up. I ran away from the hospital, ended up on the edge of this bridge in London. And obviously, thankfully for me, that's when Neil came along, stopped to talk to me, and changed things around for me, essentially, through that conversation.
So Neil, at the time, you weren't working in mental health, is that correct?
Correct. At the time, so we're talking about 2008 here, so it's January, and I just started working in Covent Garden. I just started a new career as a personal trainer, actually. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I had no prior experience, anything to do with mental health at all. I was on my first day back to work that year, on the 14th of January. I come into Waterloo train station and started to walk over Waterloo Bridge in the morning time, and that's when I saw Jonny, and it was the first time I'd seen somebody in that situation, like suicidal, sitting on a bridge. Go on.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, what went through your mind when you saw Jonny sat there or stood there? Sorry.
Well, everything was moving really quickly, like people passing by in traffic and everything. So I just thought that it just really struck me. Like it really struck me, and I couldn't just keep going. A lot of people were looking as well. Like really looking and kind of like looking at each other. But it seemed like there was a reluctance for anybody to kind of walk over. And I guess being so new to London, and I just thought there's something really strange, and I should approach and speak. And it was a really snap moment decision, but I'm glad I did, because now, how many years? 12, 13 years later, we are friends. It didn't start out like that right away. Initially, the conversation was, it was really just me clutching at straws and trying to just engage with Jonny and ask, why he was there and what was going on in his head and everything. I think an interesting point to that conversation is, as it developed over what was like half an hour of him sitting on the bridge and me standing next to him talking, is I think we actually developed quite a good rapport, as mates. And we say, well, I say to this day now, and we both say that, I'm sure we would have been friends, mates, anyway, had we met through different circumstances. Like we get on. and that's been an amazing part of us, you know, continuing our friendship. You know, going forwards, we both really like each other's company. But yeah, that conversation was the first time we met. The police intervened at about half an hour in, and we got split up and went our separate ways. And I thought we were just going to remain strangers after that moment.
And Jonny, obviously, a conversation like that, a circumstance like that, it's obviously incredibly highly stressful. Do you remember much of the conversation and what it felt like when a stranger approached you?
Yeah, I remember a lot of it now because, you know, we've re-met. I think I did for a number of years blank a lot of it out in a way. It was quite traumatic, to be honest. But I do remember. I didn't want him there, if I'm honest. When he first approached me, I was a bit rude. I was there to do one thing and one thing only. I didn't want someone to be there to, you know, talk to me, if I'm honest. But there was something about Neil and his kind of like he was so he was really grounded and persistent with, you know, why he was there, why he'd stopped. And I realized that he's not going anywhere, and, you know, I come from being in this hospital that I mentioned, the psychiatric hospital. I've been there for a month. Honestly, I was on what they called suicide watch in the hospital. So basically people come and sit and watch you all the time, but they don't talk to you. They just sit and they're there to watch you, really. But this was so different, this interaction, because Neil wanted to talk. He wanted to talk. He wanted to listen. And he was very human. That might sound really weird, but he was very just human. Because he asked me all sorts of things like, what football team do I support? And that might sound a bit strange, but actually it was really nice to have like a human conversation, because in the hospital it was sort of dehumanized in a way, if that makes
that does make
but yeah, this conversation was very, and you know, it just, I think looking back, him being another young man, I don't know, just maybe I found it easier to connect with him. All again in the hospital where I was, it was a lot of I don't know, maybe older female staff that was sitting there watching me, trying to, I don't know, but there was something about having another young guy, his energy. I think it helped me to start to open up. He was just so like all right with it. Do you know what I mean? Whereas again in the hospital, I wasn't used to that. It was so, if I started to talk and I said, look, I'm feeling suicidal, they would be like, right, medication. It was so sort of reactive. Whereas Neil was just like, he was just so laid back and just so kind of just okay with it, which was really refreshing.
And I guess as you say there, you're really getting a sense of connection with another person and someone you can relate to, I guess, because, you know, young man, sort of asking about football, things that you have in common. And then just to fast forward a few years, Neil, you said there you thought that was going to be the end of it, but of course it wasn't, was it? Because Jonny, you recorded a video that ended up going around the globe. Could you talk to us about that and the Find Mike, which now seems quite funny, right? The Find Mike campaign.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I decided to look for Neil. Quite a few years passed. Look, it took me a long time, if I'm honest, to, you know, get back on track. But that conversation on the bridge that day made a massive impact. And yeah, when I was in a better place, I said, look, I want to find Neil. I thought his name was Mike. In my head, you know, the conversation was still a bit hazy at that point. So I thought it said his name was Mike. I don't know why in my head I was like, So I called the campaign Find Mike, and we launched it. And Yeah, the response was it was very surreal. It went around the world. It started trending. It was very surreal. But the most amazing thing was just how many people came forwards, other Londoners, saying, "I've stopped someone on a bridge and talked to them and talked them off the edge." And I don't know. It made me. I don't know. I just don't think we realize, unfortunately, how many people maybe go to the bridges in London, and also how many people are talked off the edge by people like Neil, like these amazing, incredible heroes. It just really blew my mind, honestly. Yeah, but Neil took his time to come forward, so yeah, I had to wait a little bit of time, but it worked. It all worked out in the end. So yeah, that's the main thing.
Absolutely. That must have been quite surreal for you too, Neil, to suddenly see this incident from a few years ago and to be reminded of it. But I think what the point you're making there, Jonny, is this really isn't an insubstantial problem, especially in this country. And it also seems that it affects men in a different way to the way that it affects women. And I wondered if you could just both of you kind of talk me through some of the issues that surround men and their mental health.
Yeah, sure. So I guess from the layman's perspective of, understanding this, it's in the public eye a lot now, where it wasn't in 2008 when we were talking on the bridge, anything around mental health or schizophrenia or whatever, was very negative. By the time we've met again in 2014 after Find Mike, then there was much more positivity around this, this conversation. There was like a lot of like national campaigns, and only I think 2 years later you had the Royals doing Heads Together campaign, and so very, very quickly it was sort of in the public sphere now, like that this is something that we should talk about and not be ashamed of, and that really helped us to continue the work we were doing, but on a personal level, like just being friends with Jonny and like having some pretty much the only person in my life, like my friendship group, my family, that was open about their mental health was transformational. Because we know that so 1 in 4 people struggle with their mental health, have some sort of diagnosis, and it's probably more than that, to be honest. So if I know 20 males, 20 friends, for example, in my close circle, well, why none of them talking about this? I certainly had some stuff that really troubled me before I met Jonny, late teens, early 20s, and I thought, I'm just going to tell Jonny about this stuff. First time I ever got it off my chest, like as we were talking, getting to know each other, and that was really powerful. So yeah, I mean, that one moment on the bridge, even 8-10 years later, really transforms my relationship with how I talk about this with people, how I think about it day to day myself. So, it is really transformational, like these little moments you have in life. And I think it's really important to kind of like recognize, these moments we have with our friends. And I've had mates reach out to me and open up because I'm this kind of like, we are these known ambassadors and we talk about it. They know that, there is a safe space to talk to that's not a doctor, that's somebody that they feel like they're not going to get sectioned, or, a family member where they have a relationship with. So there's nothing jeopardizing that. And quite often I get guys who I've known for years call me up and say, I'm really struggling right now. I just want to get it off my chest. And it's such a privilege to know that I can just be there for them and just get back with a couple of messages, or just have an hour's chat with them, actually is actually all they want. And then I just check in with them and say, how are things going? And they say, yeah, it's really good. I'm so glad I told you that like months ago. So it is really, really powerful just to talk as guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you two are evidence that a conversation can just be transformative, and it can really sort of change someone's circumstance. Why do you think men might be reluctant to open up about their mental health?
Well, I mean, I grew up in quite macho, I'd say macho sort of family. Mental health, it just wasn't talked about. So I grew up in a Jewish community. I think religious communities, there's extra sort of layer of stigma as well, which is quite tough. And I grew up struggling with my sexuality. So again, like there was just so many complicated layers to it. But I definitely felt like, I don't know, I had to live up to this sort of male stereotype, you know, tough and strong and not vulnerable. And I saw vulnerability as a weakness when I was growing up because, like, yeah, all these men around me were just so, I don't know, they would never cry. The only time I ever saw men cry was my dad used to take me to football. And that's the only time, like, I would see men cry, like when, like, they'd get so emotional about when we were watching football, and then it wasn't safe to do so when you walked out of the stadium. Like everyone, all the men put their sort of their guards up again, and I guess I learned. You learn. You kind of, you know, you role model. So when I started struggling with my mental health in my mid-teens, I couldn't talk about it because it wasn't the right thing. I kept telling myself I shouldn't be feeling like this. I just need to push it away. I need to man up. You know, I need to be strong. Obviously now I realize that strength is actually being vulnerable and, you know, talking and opening up. But yeah, there's still this sort of male, I mean, I hear it, you know, big boys don't cry. I still hear that. You know, I see it even, I don't know, when I'm in the park and I see a parent talking to a son and saying, you know, stop the tears now to their son, you know, stop the tears. And we need to be encouraging, particularly young boys to cry and to show vulnerability from a young age. There's a certain age, I think, where around sort of 6, 7, 8, 9, where, you know, like it's not okay for maybe boys to be as vulnerable and show as much emotion. But we need to stop that messaging, you know, because, you know, ultimately we know the statistics. The statistics are that, you know, suicide is the biggest killer of men. It's the biggest killer of young men. And we're not going to change that unless we, you know, really start to encourage our young men to open up, for it to be okay, for it to be all right for them to show vulnerability. I think we still got a way. We're getting better. We still got a way to go, I think.
Yeah, I think, and I don't know, it's interesting you mentioned about the park and hearing that, because that is something that I think most men experience. You know, when you're growing up, don't be soft. You know, you're the man in the house. You're little man, but the point being is that you have to show strength. You have to pull yourself together, and probably that just encourages people to, you know, repress those emotions or maybe just to ignore them, almost to reject the idea that you have these emotions and that there's something that you should process. Instead, you just continually move forward. And I suppose that must be incredibly harmful.
It's really interesting because I think one of the biggest life events for me recently, having children. So when I met Jonny, you know, I was engaged. Actually, I was just dating somebody, and then when we met again, Find Mike, I was engaged and got married, and I've, you know, just recently had children. One's 3 and one's 1. And what I realise is because, you know, as guys, we tend to repress these these negative emotions. I really struggle to even like express my happy emotions. So yeah, I'm positive and I'm really, you know, upbeat. But if something like, I don't know, it's just really joyful, like, and I see my daughter, you know, doing something, you know, I can feel that, like, I want to cry, you know, joyful kind of tears, but I still repress it, which is bizarre. And I've kind of like been trying to work that out, you know, or like then when I'm watching a movie and something really nice happens, you know, and I feel, you know, you get the lump and you just repress it. And I think that's really sad and something I'm trying to work on, because if you can't even express the happy times, you know, with people around you, even though like it's just my wife, she doesn't care if I cry, still something that's so deep rooted. Like as a man, you were told don't cry. So if I can't even express the happy, joyous times, there's no way, you know, I'm going to be able to like really reach out when I'm struggling and I'm so embarrassed and there's stigma. So, you know, I really feel for people, and I really admire how courageous it is when people actually do reach out and for the first time do say, you know, I'm struggling, or let all the emotion out. because it is so difficult. It's difficult as a normal bloke just going through a normal life, just to cry when something makes you happy. So to be able to talk about it when you are devastated, or if you're going through something, or if you're suicidal, or you're suffering grief, it's actually a lot harder. So yeah, I just want to say, I think, you know, if there's any messages we want to put out there, look, it's incredibly brave. You know, you're not alone. You know, every other guy is going through this stuff as well. And I think the more role models that are out there just talking and showing how normal it is just to show emotion is great now. And there's so much of that, you know, celebrities and sports stars. So you don't have to look far to really look at what, like, you know, the new man 2.0 version is. And that's just be yourself, you know, be emotional. You know, you can still have your masculinity, you know, but there's no harm in just showing your sensitive side as well. So I'm trying to do that more and more personally, and I feel that's really helping me grow and helping me, be more centered. So that's something I want to kind of share out there as well. And it's all thanks to this journey. If I hadn't met Jonny, I wouldn't have met all these other people in mental health, and, you know, I'd probably be much more repressed male now than I am. You know, still work to do. So that's kind of something that's really important to me.
I guess there's two things there that are really interesting. I never really thought about it, but I suppose as a man, any emotion is almost embarrassing. I don't mean it like too heavily, but, you know, if you're really, really excited by something, or something's made you really, really happy, you might express that, and then afterwards you think, why did I go so over the top? And that's an interesting thing, because if you find that even expressing the joy, you don't want to go too far with it, then the other side means that that's very difficult to process. But then the second thing you said there that I think is really, really important is the idea that it's a work in progress. It's not, there's no quick fix here, right? It's about continuing that conversation with whoever you're talking to, but just making sure that you're processing it and moving forward, and you recognize that it won't just change all in one go.
That's right. And I think, again, I've learned a lot through, you know, my friendship with Jonny. Like, he talked to me in the early days. We would drive to places and he would show me how to meditate when we were driving the car.
Wait, that sounds bad, Neil, because it sounds like I was getting you to meditate while we're driving, which we don't recommend that. Don't meditate while you're driving. That sounds
I mean, like, just, you know, doing mindful processes, like how to process thoughts that come in and stuff. And so, like you said there about, the time frame and kind of the work in progress. It's okay. Recognize it. If it's something about yourself that you're like, I really want to change that. The biggest thing I learned from my friendship with Jonny is, like, try not to judge it. Just recognize it, and you can work on it later. You know, but even just to recognize it, keep recognizing it is really, really key. You don't need to come up with the answer straight away. And look, that really helps when it comes to your mental health as well. So that's going to put you in good stead if you're having a dark day, or, you know, you're struggling with you know, thoughts. Even if you're just slightly down or you're feeling suicidal, you know, just recognizing the thoughts and being okay with them in that moment while you try and figure out what to do is being kind to yourself. And this is all stuff I've learned through speaking with other men that we've come in contact with through our work as campaigners. And anybody can actually pick this stuff up, but you do have to be a little bit invested in this, you know. But just, you know, try with the small things. Yeah.
And for those men who are struggling, where would you recommend they turn? What resources are out there for them?
I mean, there's so many organizations, support services that are out there now, thankfully. And even during the pandemic and the lockdown, there's so much out there. There's so many online groups. For example, something called Humen, Humen. There's an online group, all men sharing, being vulnerable, being open. And it really works online. You might think it doesn't, but it really works online. There is so much out there at the moment, which is amazing. And these people are waiting for you, you know. You might feel embarrassed or ashamed, or you might feel guilty. You don't want to burden people, but, you know, that's what these people are there for. They're there to hear you and to listen to you and to help guide you. So don't be embarrassed about reaching out. You know, I know so many people, particularly in the pandemic and the lockdowns, that have reached out to helplines, to support services, and Not surprised. It's such a tough time, you know, and it takes strength to reach out. So just know there's a lot out there for people.
Wonderful. I think we've sadly run out of time, but I just want to say to you both, thank you so much for coming to speak to us, telling us about the story. And I think this has really highlighted how important it is just to talk. Because in your case, you know, a conversation really did change both of your lives enormously. So just say again, thank you so much, you know, for sharing that with us.
Thank you.